organizations. It's better? Okay, there we go. Welcome back, everyone, from our tea and coffee break. This afternoon, as we mentioned, we're going to be having some live coaching sessions where Dr. Cole is going to be speaking with 3 different organizations about potential programs that they're scaling up. And during this time, we're going to invite 3 representatives from each of the organizations to come to the stage and talk through their programs and some ideas of how to move forward with Dr. Cole. So just to give you a little rundown of how the afternoon is going to run, we're going to be spending about an hour and a half to do the entire exercise, which is about 25 minutes for each of the groups to speak and talk through their programs with Dr. Cole, during which time Dr. Cole will be happy to take questions. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions that you want to ask. And then we'll be going through each of the organizations individually as such. So now I'd like to invite representatives from 3 of our organizations to the stage. So first, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Chari of Room to Read. Room to Read works to ensure that all children can pursue quality education through literacy and gender equality. And Mr. Chari will be joining Dr. Cole to speak about Room to Read's India's plan to scale up their early grade reading program. So if Mr. Chari wants to come to the stage, that would be fantastic. Next to him, I'm also pleased to welcome Mr. Ghosh from Water for People, who's coming to the stage. And since 1991, Water for People has been working to build a world where all people have access to safe drinking water and sanitation. Mr. Ghosh will be joining Dr. Cole to speak about Water for People India's plan to scale up their Everyone Forever program. And our third representative will be joining Dr. Cole on the stage to represent ARC, a child-centered organization that aims to bring innovative programs to improve access to quality to education. And ARC will be discussing their plans to scale up their Aspire program, which helps children from disadvantaged backgrounds perform better in English language by enhancing their fluency in reading, writing, and speaking. So if we can have a representative from ARC up to the stage as well, that would be great.
Is that good? Is that good? Is that good? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's working? Oh, okay. All right. So why don't we start with Room to Read? I have a confession, which is actually I work a little bit with Room to Read in San Francisco, which is where the center is, and I'm on the advisory board. So this was actually a pleasure for me. But since not everybody in the room is familiar with what you're doing, why don't we spend a minute? So what are the outcomes that this program is trying to achieve?
Yeah, good morning to everybody. Thanks, Richard, for excellent presentation in the morning. There's more insight to take the slides you have taken. So, first of all, Room to Read in India started in 2003, and presently it is implementing the programs in 9 states of India. So there are 4 programs in Room to Read. One of the programs is a literacy instruction, that is we call reading and writing instruction program. So where we work in 2 states in India, in Rajasthan and Uttarakhand. So around we are working in 483 schools in both the states. So the program aims at to develop reading skills in grade 1 and grade 2 children. So by the end of the program, so we are aiming at every child should read independently and develop habit of reading once you go out from the primary education. So this is our objective of the program. So this program started in 2008 in 3 states in Delhi, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand. In 2011, we have phased out from Delhi because of the high enrollment in Delhi schools. Because the strategy we follow in the classroom is limited to 30 children in a classroom, but in case of Delhi, there are huge enrollment. We could not able to transact in the classroom, and it's very difficult to even monitor the program. That's why we stick to only these 2 states, and the program is being implemented.
Hang on just 1 second. So I don't want to be rude, but I'm going to interrupt people when I think there's an important teachable moment. Okay? Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
You guys okay with that? Okay, great. So notice, I'm sorry, your name again?
Chari.
Chari. So what did Chari just said? They believe their program won't work if there are more than 30 kids in a classroom, right? So now we could get into a whole discussion of what, based on what evidence and all that sort of thing, but my point being that if we started to think about scale and where this could be scaled up, assuming we had the data, I'd be willing to bet that you immediately eliminate a fairly significant number of Indian schools who probably have more than 30 kids in a classroom in first or second grade. I'm not making a judgment. I'm simply noting the fact, right? So this program, as it's currently designed, according to Chanri, is only scalable in places where that's true. Or, alternatively, Room to Read or somebody else would have to do advocacy to get school sizes down to 30. Yeah? So notice the way these little gems get dropped in the course of the conversation. Yeah? Please continue.
Yeah. Even there are schools having 60 children in a classroom, but there are sections.
Okay.
So they were into sections. If you see even government schools, you won't find large classrooms. You find only capacity of 30 children.
Okay, fine.
So that is the reason. So we have taken 30 as a number of children. So the challenges we are facing. So as of now, we are not thought of scaling up into other states. So presently, every year we are expanding our program into within the block to more schools. So we are thinking from 2014 onwards how to scale up this program.
Okay, so hang on a second. So your current scaling up strategy in terms of the terms that I defined is to increase coverage.
Yeah.
Right? In other words, you're staying in the same blocks, you're staying with the same populations,
Yes.
and you're increasing the percentage of children in that block that you reach.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, just
Yeah.
being clear. Okay.
So then, how to scale up this program into other states and even other districts within the state where we are working. So the problem is we last March, so we have phased out from 67 schools in both the states, since we have completed 5 years of intervention in these schools. So then after phasing out from these schools, I don't know, so what is the sustainability and how to follow up with these schools, whether our intervention is working, what we are expecting all these years. So this is a big question mark to us, because working with government system is very difficult, because convincing teachers and asking them to follow our strategy, and they have other commitments, not only teaching, they will do all non-teaching jobs also, like population survey and other things. So one of the biggest challenge we are facing is adoption of this strategy by the teachers. So as long as we are intervening, then they will try to adapt our method and they try to transact in the classroom whatever we are expecting. The problem is once we come out from these schools, the problem comes in.
Great. So let's take a step back, because I personally, and I don't think everybody in this room understands enough about your model to make sure we understand it so we could think about how we scale it. So first of all, who actually delivers this model? Do you train the teachers, or do you add people like facilitators or additional teachers?
Actually, this program started with the model of facilitators. We have facilitators in the school. They used to go for 2 hours every day and teach the kids. And so every facilitator is having 2 schools in a day. They used to cover 2 schools. But what we thought is, as long as we provide the facilitators, very difficult to even institutionalize this strategy. So that's what we have withdrawn this facilitator model, and we train the teachers for 9 days in a year. So they will attend the training sessions and they will go back and they will try to do their own method. So whenever these monitors, we have a monitoring mechanism where one field coordinator goes to every week to the school, and they will sit out entire day and see the classroom transaction, whether teacher is following or not, is there any gaps in the teaching. Then so the field coordinator try to model the teacher how to transact in the classroom, what kind of activities to be done in the classroom. So all the even coaching and mentoring will be done by the field coordinator. But on that particular day, teacher used to teach whatever we taught in the teacher training. The problem is once this coordinator is not going to the school, we don't know whether the teacher is teaching or not. This is a big question mark. Of course, we'll get some sense of that what happened last week and whether the children learned something based on the plan done by the coordinator and the teacher. That can be done through observation. But basically, sometimes so we are expecting 60 minutes per a day per literacy instruction. But what happened? Teachers are not providing 60 minutes for each grade, but they are coming to the class and doing some activity and going back to other class or doing some other work. How to ensure this 60 minutes class is taking place in a day? So these are the challenges if you go with the large scale. So because we are in 483 schools and one coordinator is looking after 1:6 schools, that's fine as long as there are donors giving funds to us, there is a monitoring mechanism, that's fine. If how to do the cost effectiveness of this program, because how to institutionalize this thing.
Okay.
These are the challenges.
So it sounds to me like the major, so this is a question of incentives. Why do you think that teachers do the program when you're there? Do you pay them extra? Do they get
No,
small
we
stuff?
won't pay any extra amount. Maybe they may think that say we will observe and we'll go and inform to their officials, and I don't know what kind of sense they get, but they will try to do so whatever we taught in the training program.
And why you think they do it just because you're showing up every week and watching them?
Maybe one of the reasons.
Any other reasons?
Oh, no, I didn't see any other reasons, but yeah, I can't blame all the teachers. There are few teachers.
What do you mean?
No, what I'm telling is not every teacher is doing same kind of thing on the monitoring day, but most of the teachers are following even the coordinator is not visiting or not.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you know this works? I mean, what are the outcomes you're producing?
No, we have internal assessment system. So there is a workbook we provide to the children. So there are internal assessment sheets. So by child is done completely the assessment sheet that we think that child has understood the concept.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a mechanism.
So you've shown, at least based on your internal assessments, that if the teachers follow this curriculum and they teach the 60 minutes every day, that the reading skills of the children improve based on their performance on these internal assessments. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. And how do you know that 60 minutes is the right number?
60 minutes actually, so we have gone through some of the research studies, and the child can learn language, that reading and writing, if the child gets 60 minutes in a day for reading and writing.
Okay. Not 45 minutes and not 75 minutes.
No, if you see overall in India, so if you see there are 22 working days. If you take out of summer vacation and you take out of other local festivals, other things. If the actual instructional days come to 162 days out of 365 days in a year, at least if you target 60 minutes in a day, the 150 hours child is getting to learn reading and writing.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason I'm asking these questions, though, is I'm trying to find if there's any evidence about dosage, right? Okay, so it seems to me, so from a scaling up perspective, there are three issues. I hope you don't mind if I refer to you in the third person. I'm going to refer to you as you. I'm going to talk about you.
Yeah, sure.
It's okay? Okay. So it seems to me there are three issues. The key issue is the incentives. Okay? Because basically the only reason it appears that this model works at all is because there's monitoring, and at least Chanri is afraid, though they don't have firm evidence, that you take away the monitoring, then you'll expect, I think, radioactive decay. A certain number of teachers will continue to do it for a certain amount of time, but sooner or later this will disappear. Okay. The second question, which we really haven't gotten into, is the model, how much is the model quantitative versus qualitative? So is the training that you're giving the teachers about what to teach or about how to teach, or both?
Yeah, what to teach.
What to teach.
What to teach, how to teach. There is a plan for transit in the classroom. There is a wiki plan.
And what is the challenge when the facilitators or the coordinators, coach the teachers, are they mostly coaching about what to teach or about how they deliver in the classroom?
How they deliver.
Right. So there is a how, I think from what I'm understanding, there's a how component. Okay? And, yeah, okay. So, what incentives do teachers respond to?
Incentives.
Mm-hmm. Why do they do anything?
Can you repeat that?
Why do the teachers do anything at all? Why do they come to class? Why do they open their mouths? Why do they do anything?
So because their prime responsibility is to teach in the classroom, so they make children to learn.
Uh-huh.
So
And what happens if they don't do that? What if the teachers and the children don't learn anything?
So there are cases where teachers are not teaching and children are learning, but naturally the children will get dropped out after primary education. They won't go beyond the class 5.
Right.
So there the parents' involvement comes into the school. The parents will come to the class and ask teacher why my child is not reading.
Okay.
So that's what. So we have another component, parental involvement.
Because basically, what I would say, I don't. Obviously, I've only been talking to you about this for 10 minutes or whatever, is that currently this is not a scalable model, because you haven't figured out an existing monitoring or supervision system that is sustainable, that can reinforce the incentives that you use, your monitors. Okay? So it strikes me that there is one of several alternatives that if I were you, I'm just making suggestions, okay? I don't really want anybody in this room to think that I'm the scaling up expert, so that Richard has all the answers and whatever he says is right. Okay, so these are just some ideas that I want to float with you. Okay, is how do we make the monitoring sustainable? Okay, so here would be my ideas. One is you mentioned parents. Okay, so is there a way to educate parents or to form a parents committee for each school that you introduce this in that understands what the criteria are of the 60 minutes a day and a certain thing is done, or even have parent aides who visit the classrooms? Okay, so some form of community mobilization, whether it's the parents, whether it's the Panchayat Raj, or it's the village. Is there equivalent of a village education committee, like the village health and sanitation committee?
So they have essentially school management committees.
Okay, the school management committee. So is there a way to embed the monitoring in the school management committees? That's one possibility. The second is, how can you motivate principals or other supervisors to take over these monitoring roles? I suspect, but I don't know because I'm not an expert on the Indian education system, that the principals and the teachers are held accountable to certain things. What are they? Is it just enrollment? Is it just that the kid occupies a chair every day? Or do they actually have test results? Or is it they have to master certain material? That was a question. And the answer to the question is?
Yeah, they have to produce the results.
What results?
The learning outcomes at the end of the academic year.
And what happens if they don't produce them?
So they have to report to the government. So
okay, and they report to the government, and they. What if they fudge the numbers? What if they make up numbers that aren't true?
Yeah. There are chances if the monitoring is not happening.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that in order to scale up this model, remember we talked about the importance of aligning capabilities, capacities, and the enabling environment. So it strikes me that this is a question of the enabling environment, which is, it's hard for me to sit here in 20 minutes and come up with the answer with you, but I'm wondering what are principals and teachers held accountable for, and if you could get into the system in a district or a state a set of criteria that they're monitored for that makes them monitor that your program is being done properly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually we have introduced the joint monitoring system with the government officials.
Uh-huh.
So whenever the program officers in the state goes to the schools, they will take along with the block officials or district officials.
Whenever who goes to look at the
To
school?
the monitoring to the schools.
Your people.
Your people, yeah.
Okay.
Your people, and so they will take government officials along with them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what happens when you leave? Will the government officials continue to go?
No, as of now, they are not going alone. So they're coming along with us. That's what how to do institutionalize this strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who would make the decision to have that monitoring by the government officials that now accompany you? Who has to make that decision? Is it the education secretary or who?
Not at state level. That is district level, block levels. That is block education officer.
Okay. Great. So what kind of advocacy do you do with the district education officers to have that continue? Have you done yet?
Yeah, it's advocacy. We do meetings every month and we show the result to the block level, and district level we do every quarter, and state level we do every half yearly.
And is that sufficient?
Yeah.
Is it sufficient to get that agreed to?
Yeah. So that.
Oh,
So they are happy with the program and the way showing the result.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm trying to find out is that is showing the results going to get the monitoring to continue once you leave?
Yeah. That assurance I don't know.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's a political process which is that I think the room to read is falling into the traditional trap of thinking that results are not only necessary but sufficient. And my suspicion is that most education, sure, there are highly motivated, really good people who are district education officers or technical experts at the state level or commissioners or secretaries, but the majority of people respond to other incentives. They respond to incentives to be promoted, they respond to incentives of recognition, they respond to incentives being paid more, of corruption and kickbacks. There's a whole set of them, okay? And the results are necessary but not sufficient. For example, I'm wondering if it's possible to do publicity or awards. That this school was named Best School of the Year in terms of first and second grade reading skills because they did your program. Or this teacher gets an award and maybe an extra 500 or 1,000 rupees. In other words, I think that this program needs more work, on the one hand, on creating sustainable incentives from in the program itself, and on the other hand, political work to align it or to build incentives into the educational accountability and monitoring system to be sustainable. Because as of now, I think the question you're asking at the beginning of our conversation is exactly right, which is why will this continue? And I think you're right. The answer is it won't. And I don't think, so there has to be a way to publicize the results and create rewards, whether in terms of fame or money or recognition or incentives that would motivate teachers and principals and monitors to continue to do it. And just the results are not going to be sufficient. Yeah, so we have a suggestion from the floor.
Yeah, we do also have a program.
Oh, you're part of Room to Read too? Oh, okay.
We have a separate program on salt iodization in India and other countries. So in that we're basically working with the salt processors, and it's like the private sector. So where we insist on the salt processors to iodize the salt adequately, which adding that extra potassium iodide to the salt is like an extra cost to them, but it has a lot of health benefit, which obviously they're not willing. So bringing it up to that marginal level. So like you've pointed out, that problem of monitoring. So we have our district monitors who go and who sample the test results. But yeah, to create that sustainability, what we have now done is that we have created the salt processor associations, and where in the monthly meeting, we display the salt results of each of the processors in that group. And the one who have been adequately iodizing it, we give certificates of excellence to them. So this kind of creates that incentive within the processors, because it also helps them take leverage with the government or with other parties that we have been adequately iodizing, and it helps them to promote their brand. So we have kind of developed those incentives like recognition or certificate. So probably you can look at some of those incentives for teachers also.
See, I think that's a great suggestion, because I think there's a tendency to see incentives and particularly monitoring in terms of punishment. You know, if you don't do something, your hand is going to get slapped. And generally speaking, punishment is the least effective form of incentive. Some type of reward, whether it's a certificate or peer pressure or like forming an association of teachers or forming a parents association or a parent-teacher association. So building in some form of monitoring mechanism and publicity and reward, even if it's not a monetary reward, can make a huge difference. I mean, I think it would be interesting, for example, if in every block, maybe, there was an association of teachers who sort of get together once a week or once a month, maybe supported by the school system that gets a small stipend for travel allowance. We all know that travel allowance is a way of giving people money without really giving them money. So that they can have these meetings and say, how is it going? And or that somebody independent, part of these teachers would evaluate the internal assessments and say, this is, this teacher has done the best and gets a reward. So what do you think about all this,
So
Chandra?
if you talk about the incentives, I think if you see in Indian education, there are a lot of teacher unions. It is completely every year the state governments are giving best teacher award. It's completely it goes to the involves more politics into that, and so one teacher gets the award, then other teachers will know what the teacher has done, so nothing he has done. So there are a lot of politics involved in this. That's why I don't know how to go into these incentive systems. There is a big challenge. So recently we had experience. As I said, in March 2013, we have phased out from 67 schools in Rajasthan and Uttarakhand. We asked government in Rajasthan, can you sign on the appreciation certificate we want to provide to the teachers, because he has worked for 5 years with us. The secretary denied to sign on the certificate. We said if we sign on the certificate, other teachers will ask, why you are giving only to these teachers? There are other programs. Why you want to entertain only with room to read, not with others? These type of questions we are getting from the state government.
Excellent. So I think this, first of all, shows how political scaling up is and the need to involve all the stakeholders. So one of the problems I think that you're alluding to is that the teachers' unions are very important, and that Mahumita has asked me once, she's asked me at least 3 or 4 times, when do you involve key stakeholders in the scaling up process? So it would strike me that it might be interesting to start working with teachers' unions from the beginning, which is we would like your cooperation in creating a reading program for first and second standard children that is sustainable. We understand that your teachers work hard, they're underpaid, they're overworked, they have too many children, they don't have enough materials, etc. How can we work with you to create a program that after we leave is sustainable and has the right incentives so that there isn't perceptions of favoritism or all that? So I think you've raised an excellent point about the question of stakeholders. And similarly, the question would be, well, how do you get the education secretary aligned? Now, ARC may also be implementing a similar program in Rajasthan, and maybe there's 10 other literacy programs in the same state. Why your program? Okay. And I think one of the big problems of scaling up is that, in particular, because the way these things are funded, now, Room to Read is unusual because you don't usually take donor funding. You usually have your own internal funding. But there's a lot of incentive to do something innovative. We are going to do our own thing as opposed to somebody else's thing. So again, do you have any idea, Chandra, how many literacy programs like yours, when I say like yours, I mean in the broadest sense of the word, are there? Do you know?
In India or the world?
Well, let's say either India or North India or...
India is very few working on this literacy.
3, 5?
Yeah, 3.
Okay. So at some point, does it make sense to get together with the other 2 or 3 and say, look, we have this problem that the education secretary says, why should I give an award for the Room to Read program and not for the ARC program? Okay? And as opposed to saying, we're going to get together and form a common curriculum, we'll take the best practices from you and from ARC and the other 1 or 2, and then all of a sudden, and we're working with the teachers' unions, And all of a sudden it becomes a political process where you have all the NGOs that are doing it, the teachers, and maybe there's a parent association too, is there?
There are parents.
Yeah.
Not SMCs, the school management committee.
The school management committees. In other words, so in a sense we need to, so to answer Mahumita's question at the beginning, if you think about this from the beginning, right, so if you remember one of my slides, which was start with the end in mind, I think. Oops, maybe it's not there. Yes, 4. Start with the end in mind and work backwards. So we've now discovered who are the stakeholders that are key. Education secretary, school management committee, the teachers union, the teachers themselves, parents, other NGOs that might be implementing similar programs, okay? And there's a tendency in scaling up to do the program and then figure out at the end, how do we get all those people to play nicely together? Okay? That's much harder to do than to get them to play nicely together at the beginning, which is we're coming into your community, we get a committee of the school management committee, the teachers union, the education officials, and whoever else you want, and say, we want to do this and we want to work with you. Okay? Because then, instead of raising objections at the end, they help you solve the problem at the beginning. As I think I was saying during the coffee break, there are 3 challenges in scaling up. Finding an innovation that works, technically, the politics of getting it to work, in terms of both adopting it, the incentives, etc., and sustainability, institutional and political, and actually getting it implemented on the ground. Okay? As I think we've seen in this case, I have never seen a case where the biggest problem is getting something that works. The problems are always in the politics or in the implementation. In this case, actually, I think it's more politics than implementation. So trying to figure out the politics up front, as opposed to after the fact, and don't take that as a criticism, because everybody does this, but I think we go back, my suggestion is to take a step back, go back to the drawing board, and try to say, okay, let's get these stakeholders involved and say, we've been doing this, we think it's working, we want to scale it up, and we want to work with all of you and to redefine this model in a way with the teachers unions. How can we get a system and where we do get rewards, or certificates? You've made this objection, so what would it take? And often, one of the tools that I use is I call a political map, which is who has to make the decision. So it's the education secretary, the education commissioner, this. So then the next question you ask is, who do they listen to? My experience in Rajasthan, actually, is who they listen to? The UNICEF advisor. Does that sound familiar to people? Yes. Yes. Okay. So if the UNICEF advisor is part of your team or your committee or co-sponsoring or whatever, you have a political edge that you might not have to begin with. Okay? So figuring out who those key stakeholders are and getting them on board early, because then it becomes the UNICEF Room to Read Teachers Union program and not just the Room to Read program. Now, if you have an ego problem with that, then you have a problem. But, okay, but I figure it's better to get the thing scaled up, even if you have to add 3 names to it, than it is to be right and small and have all the credit. So you can share the credit and go to scale, or you can not share the credit and be small. So it's your choice. I don't know. Is this helpful at all? Yeah. All right, well, let's give a big hand to Room to Read.
Thank you very much.
So, any questions or comments from the audience? Since I know I'm supposedly an expert, but I think all of you know as much about this as I do. Anybody want to add anything on this one before we move to water? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, I'm Sukhpreet from Pratham Master. One thing which you all discussed was very correct. We also work in Rajasthan and a lot of places. Mobilizing communities is, I think, the most important thing to do, because even SMCs are more like functional terms. Operationally, they are not active. You'll have people who are meant to be part of the SMC. You have parents, mothers, you have to have X amount of female members. But these are people, especially in Rajasthan, who are not active. So the first thing to do is actually spending a lot of time in the communities and getting them on board on what your theory of change is and what you understand of your program. Because then getting district officials, they themselves will get those people. So if your community is on board, especially in very remote location like Rajasthan, that does it for you. It's done it for us a lot of places.
Can I just add?
Please.
The same line.
Turn on your mic.
Yeah, Room to Read can't go to every community and start community mobilization. Do you connect with the existing NGOs or social organizations working there who would help to sustain this movement?
So we are doing some of the activities at community level. Actually, our coordinator after school hours, he goes to even parents' house. So he will identify children who are not coming regularly, and
Sorry, I meant a little more than that.
Yeah.
An existing group which did more than just education, who would be there apart from Room to Read's program.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, understood. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I think the suggestion, just to generalize it, thank you for that intervention, is this isn't what's being suggested here is scaling up through collaboration. The suggestion from this gentleman is that to solve the incentive problem, we need to do community mobilization. And Room to Read does a little of it, but that's not really what their core competency is. That's not what their value added is. Their value added is really education, literacy training, curriculum, teacher training, etc. And there might be other ones that are better at mobilization and working with school management committee. So how do we form those partnerships? And I think one of the things we also have to start to get away from is doing a scaling up intervention at a time. Because when you think about it, we could probably just within this room, we could come up with 5 or 10 or 15 interventions in which some form of community accountability would help them become sustainable and viable and have fidelity and quality. So if every single one like Room to Read is going to approach every other, is going to work with the school management committee or the village health and sanitation committee, it becomes a mess. As opposed to at some point, why don't we have a coalition of saying, here's the package that we are going to advocate for of health and education in every village or every block or district. There's a literacy program. There's a girls, domestic violence education program. I mean, this is not my business, but whatever the 5 or 10, all of which the local Panchayat Raj and its subsidiary institutions are holding accountable for, that becomes a viable thing as a doing case by case. Because I think one of the key challenges of scaling up in many countries, and certainly India is like that, is the governance. The governance and accountability is weak. And so when the program ends, how do you ensure governance and accountability? And doing that on a intervention by intervention thing doesn't make any sense. So how do we form a coalition of organizations, and especially a donor like whether it's USAID or DFID or the World Bank could actually bundle cross-sector a number of these things to build that kind of accountability. And especially if you're delivering through the private sector, you want that accountability even more. So, for scaling up, this accountability is really a key issue. All right. So I think we learned a lot on this one. So without further ado, you want to tell us a little bit about the water project, Water for People.
Good afternoon. I'm Suttanaran Ghosh from Water for People. So I manage the India country program part. So with me, Nidhi is here. So Water for People is an international US-based organization. It supports the development activities in terms of funding and technical ideas. And at the moment we are working in 11 countries. And in South Asia only in India. And again within in India, so far we have worked in 2 states, and this year we are planning to scale up into 3 more states. The idea and the approach we work with is called Everyone Forever. Everyone Forever is actually an approach of service delivery mechanism for water and sanitations. It's because before developing this idea, we have undertaken a study at the different countries in the globe and found that the basic problem in water and sanitation service delivery system was the way service was delivered as a whole is the problem. So that water and sanitation service needs different way, different approach, and therefore we come up with the idea of Everyone Forever. So it has 2 parts. Everyone means inclusion, universal coverage. So we believe that if anybody working in any geography, it should work on a model which can meet the needs of every one of the geography. It should not be only fit for certain group of the people of the community. It should be a model which can serve everyone, which can provide service to everyone. That is why we say everyone. Everyone, again, it's not only for the family, it's for family, all the families and all the institutions. So that nobody of that geography will get water from any unimproved source. Nobody of that geography will go to open for natural causes. And the forever means is all about service delivery mechanism, different stakeholders involvement, monitoring, maintenance management system, and as a whole sustainability mechanism. And this everyone forever concept stands with certain principle, is that the inclusion, universal coverage, and the stakeholder involvement or partnership. We believe and we have found and experienced is that any development model or any approach or any service delivery model, it's difficult to be successful in that if you do alone. It needs to include every stakeholder who has direct or indirect responsibility of providing services. So therefore, in order to say the stakeholder, mainly we are working with the PRI system, Panchayati Raj institutions, and the block, Panchayat, district and state administration, the community leaders, or the different like youth clubs, farmer clubs, women SAGs, community-based institutions and NGOs. And the other principle is, what if people never provide 100% funding for anything we do? It's because right at the beginning we want to involve everyone, not only physically but also financially. So therefore, if a water project suppose cost, in Sundarban area it cost 1,60,000 rupees for installing a tube well. And we provide only 1 lakh rupees, maximum. The rest 60,000 rupees has to come from the government and community together. And again, it's not that community has to provide certain percent all across. It's again depending on their own economic conditions. But it needs to be certain, it's maybe a small portion, but that should be a certain portion coming from the consumer as well. And also, government would be providing some money.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Just because we only have so much time, I want to make sure we get the basics down, because you've shared a lot of the principles. But what are the outcomes of if you run this project successfully in a village or a block, what are the outcomes you've achieved? How do you know it works?
Yes. So we have a monitoring mechanism by which we try to understand the outcomes we have achieved. We call flow.
But is the outcome that everybody has
Yes.
access, universal access to improved water?
Yes. In West Bengal, where we have worked, the 2 block and around 7 lakh population, no 5 lakh populations, 5.5 population. Nobody of those geography getting water from any unimproved source.
Okay, so
And nobody going out for the irrigation. No school. No, there is no school in those geography without toilet and water facilities.
okay, and what are the technical components of this intervention? Do you either provide or build tube wells or distribution systems, or what does that look like?
We have 2 kinds: the gravity water fed system, that's overhead tank, and also tube well. So mainly in the source is actually tube well. If it is then deep borewell, then connecting with the overhead tank, certain geography, and also for some isolated community, because Sundarban is the area where maybe 10 family itself a community. Then say for that you need to have installation of a single borewell. So there we have both the kind.
Okay, and so we'll talk about in a minute how you do it, but somehow or other you either create either the gravity-fed model or the tube well model. We won't worry about the toilets for a minute. And then you also create some social mobilization in social institutions what do those look like in 25 words or less?
Sorry.
Who is it that runs, maintains, organizes the water and sanitation system?
The other principle is the operation and maintenance system for every sanitation and water facility. Suppose in case of tube well, if 50 family getting water, so among the 50 women or member from the 50 family, we facilitate them to choose 10 to 12 or to 13 members and form a Watson committee. We say Watson committee, and we introduce idea of tariff collections on monthly basis or quarterly basis. And on the other hand, then we found so one of the requirement actually was coming initially we did not do is that the mechanic. Even the Watson committee has tariff system on regular basis. They have money with them. But there is no mechanic who can respond to the repairing needs on time. And one of our criteria to say and understand that sustainability is no tube well should be down more than 24 hours. If a tube well down more than 24 hours, then there is problem with the sustainability mechanism. And then what we do, in the same local community, we train the people, train mainly the local youth, who is actually unemployed and looking for some employment opportunity. We trained them and made them a mobile hand pump mechanic, along with many other things. So we tried to link the sustainability of water system with a livelihood for certain people, and we created a business on that. And this is how the people respond. And we link them with the Gram Panchayat and all the Watson committee, that this is the people who can meet your repairing needs. And we have also introduced them with the government system. It's because typically in the rural societies, what historically been followed by the people is whenever any breakdown happen in the table, they first call to the Gram Panchayat. They ask them to come and fix the repair. And at the same time, as I've said, that's Gram Panchayat one of the stakeholder implementing in the program. So once they get the call from the community, they said, I'm not going to go to repair. This is the mobile mechanic and this is his mobile number. You contact him and you make payment. And in case, if you are not able to pay entire amount, I'll take care of the rest of the part. But you have to pay 50% of that. So again, in that, the share of the repairing cost between Gram Panchayat and Watson committee is depending on the repairing size. If it is a major repairing, and if the Watson committee is very new, cannot take care of the entire money, that Gram Panchayat will take care. But no Gram Panchayat and no water system is like that. Everything has to be taken care of by the government for maintenance. No.
Okay. So we're going to run out of time if we don't move to what your challenges are and what you want to scale up. But I just want to make one observation, which is this model has one tremendous strength and one tremendous weakness in terms of scaling up. And it actually is the same thing. Any guesses from my perspective? It's comprehensive. Okay? So in other words, when you think about it, they're basically doing everything. They're providing the technology, they're providing the social mobilization, they're trying to cover all the politics by getting the Gram Panchayat and all the other actors involved. They actually think about maintenance and sustainability. They're creating this maintenance committee. They're even training mechanics. So this has a lot of moving parts. So remember when I was talking earlier this morning, I was talking about the fact that one of the key things about when you're documenting a model for scaling up is you want to say what's internal to the model and what's external, because anything that's external, if it changes as you move from place to place, will screw you up. Well, they've basically internalized everything, right? So in a sense, they've solved the problem of externalities of, in other words, suppose instead of building this committee, they were using existing village health and sanitation committees. Well, then it would probably only work in places where there were really strong ones, and it wouldn't work in places there are weak ones. So they've solved that problem by building their own committee and making sure it's strong and inclusive.
No, actually, yes.
Oh, okay.
No, we do not, many of the parts I missed out.
That's okay, we only have 20 minutes, so go ahead.
Is that operation maintenance systems, we do not, I'm sorry to use the term creation, but actually we do not create anything. It's actually strengthening of the existing system. So it's even at the Gram Panchayat block level and village level, we are doing three things. is that at the monitoring system. So what additionally we are trying to push into the existing system is the tool. What actually they are lacking, like the monitoring tool. At the moment, the Gram Panchayat or block and a district administration do not have such tool to do all the monitoring needs. So that is what we're pushing, we are creating.
I understand. So what I'm saying, thank you for the correction, is fine. They don't create the institutions, but they strengthen them. But they still do it in a very comprehensive way. So on the one hand, they've internalized all the externalities, but when you start to think of it, what other if you wanted to scale this up, okay, when we start to think about expansion, replication, or collaboration, can you think of another organization that could do this? There's another organization that has the technical knowledge about tube wells and gravity-fed systems, that has the political and community mobilization skills to strengthen the various institutions and to get all the actors to work together. This is a comprehensive model, and they bring a lot of skills to this. This doesn't. Could the Ministry of Panchayat Raj have all this skills about the technical, about how to do tube wells and well, so before I ask the question, why don't I let you talk and say, so what are the challenges in the 5 or 10 minutes we have left that you'd like to talk about scaling up?
So when we started initially, actually we started our Everyone Forever program in Sundarban region. So in India, Sundarban region is the only first geography where we started Everyone Forever program. When we started after 2 years we failed. The problem with the political supports, sustainability in the political supports. In the 2 years time, 2 times the government changed. And the problem with the political leaders is that they always fear if they promote sustainability, tariff system, community-based maintenance, management system, they are going to lose their next election. So therefore, making the political people speaking, no, we are providing you well, but you need to take care of putting your own money. And they feel discomfort to speak to the communities because they feel that they are the people, if they say that I'll bring money for you from the government, then they will get vote. This is what. But politically what we started doing the next year onward, we tried to be invisible in the community. Nobody knows what of our people is doing that. Everybody knows Gram Panchayat and block government doing this. So therefore our principle is that try to be invisible in the community and try to be visible with the government system. So government has to know if they need some support for scaling up that, whom they should approach. But community should know if they want to have if they have demands to get certain things, whom they should approach, not what of our people. They should go to the government.
Okay, so what's the challenge for scaling up that you'd like to
This
discuss?
is one big challenge and
I
other.
see. So you haven't been successful in
Yes,
achieving
yes,
this?
but still it is on process.
Okay.
This is what we are doing. And the other one is the depletion of groundwater. So we have trying to learn many things, but we have found from all the lessons is that none of the model of groundwater recharging or sustainability is actually giving answers for all the things of sustainability of water sources. There is one challenge, and also this is main challenge in terms of drinking water supply scheme. And for the school water and sanitation project is the regular hygiene educations. Retain the sustainability of the hygiene educations in school. Is again the means again the political issue is the role of school management committee and their role in monitoring the performance of the school routine and education system. Is 2 things we are working on, but we have certain solutions for the first one, but not for the last one.
So the first one being how to be invisible and get the government to take credit. Okay. So it sounds like both of these, though, are issues of sustainability more than they are issues of scale. Is that correct?
First one is the next one is more issues with the sustainability. But I think first one is almost we are done with the first one. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just having a little trouble following you. So could you rephrase the question then? What is exactly the sustainability question? Is how to get this school management committees and the other local institutions to hold the accountability correctly and to go to the government when things are not working?
School management committee is nothing but a political body,
Right.
and every year it gets changed.
Mm-hmm.
So once you build capacity of the school management committee for monitoring, next year you are not going to see the same people. Next year again you need to build capacity. And also the what do you call, the catching capacity or receiving capacity of all the members is not equal.
Mm-hmm.
If you expect that the first time the people you got, their receiving capacity is not equivalent to the next time you are getting people. So what you have to do, you have to always negotiate with the parameters or your inputs, depending on the people getting into the system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So does this sound like anything else that we talked about this morning? Or what category or problem is this? This is a category of institutional sustainability, right? Whereas Water for People doesn't want to be in the business of staying in every community and retraining the school management committee for the next 500 years about how to manage the system and make sure that if it's broken, the Grand Panchayat or somebody comes and fixes it. They want to train the school management committee once or maybe twice at the most, and then this should work by itself, but that's not working because there's this constant turnover and there's no legacy mechanism to pass the training on. Okay. So
School Watson Committee again, as per the Right to Education Act, when the Right to Education Act came in, we also have a Watson Committee. School Watson Committee is combination of children and teacher. But problem is there are certain school in North and Nadia district there, which is arsenic prone area. So you see that the school, even 10 years old school, but running absolutely fine. And this is become a model for the government, and that is why one of the district government has declared and taken a decision in their policy meeting that this is model they are going to scale up in the entire district. East Manipur district, they are going to replicate that, and whatever people would be providing technical supports for that. The problem with the involving children is, in some cases, parents are not okay with. They do not want to see their children is involved cleaning toilet block. And also for the primary school problem is, if you want to clean your toilet block, you need to have somebody coming every week and cleaning. That leads some cost. But primary school, as you know, it's a free education. They do not have any money receiving from the student. At the same time, they are also not getting money from the government. The maintenance or involving even Watson Committee members in primary school is the mainly challenge still. Because I'll give you an example. In Bihar, one primary school get 10,000 rupees for entire maintenance and management of the whole school building per year. So you can understand how 10,000 can meet even chalk, duster, board, sweeping, everything, electricity, everything that school needs. It's not possible with 10,000. But at the same time, they cannot involve the primary school children for cleaning the toilet block.
So I have a couple suggestions, but a lot of you know India better than I do. Any suggestions? Well, I guess the question I'd ask you is, what is the possibility? I mean, while you're there, you get it to work, right?
Why I am?
While Water for People is present, these committees function effectively, right? You train them, okay? And it's only when you leave that you really have a problem, or is there still a problem when you're there?
So, the reason we are seeing for scaling up is that we believe that whatever we have done in South 24 Pargana and Bihar is a model. It can work, and it's a sustainable model. We do not have problem with that. The only problem, if you ask me, the challenge so far we could not be able to achieve is the primary school maintenance management system.
Mm-hmm.
This is only challenge. We
So-
do not have answer. Otherwise, rest of the parts we are okay, and this is why I just said that district government has adopted that, and South 24 Bagana district government also adopted pieces of the everyone forever, like this mobile hand pump mechanic.
Mhm.
They are scaling up into the entire district by their own money. And the seeing our everyone forever program, the Bihar state government, the Ministry of Drinking Water Sanitations, the principal secretary, they incorporated water for people as advisor to develop the roadmap for water sanitation for entire Bihar. So this is how
I understand.
it's also.
So I think that this is, first of all, it's interesting, and I don't think it's an accident that so far we've done 2 cases, and they both, the biggest challenge are accountability and sustainability over time. So I think we're starting to see a pattern, which I've noticed before since I've been working here for a long time. It seems to me that I would suggest just trying 2 solutions. One solution might be that, as I'm sure everybody in this room knows, there's now a strong move in India towards decentralization and to having a lot of authority and responsibility devolved or decentralized to Panchayat Raj, to the Water and Sanitation Committee, et cetera, But, and in a sense, if you look at the history of international development for the last 20, 30 years, the name of the game has been, how do we solve the governance problem, right? First, we tried to get central governments to do it, but a lot of them were corrupt and inefficient, so we didn't like that. Then we went to privatization, and we didn't like that, so then we went to, maybe I'm getting the sequence wrong, then we went to NGOs. But NGOs didn't have any accountability, and they didn't work at scale. Then we went to privatization, and then there was a question of, well, who holds the private sector accountable? And now we're at kind of the phase of decentralization. But what makes us think that local government either has the skills, training, or accountability that central government doesn't have? Just because you decentralize it doesn't mean all those things just magically appear. Okay? Or maybe that's, I guess magic is a big trend in the development field, which is why we have such great results. Okay? So it strikes me there are one of 2 possibilities. One is I really like the NHSRC model, which is that you cannot create these institutions, whether they're in health or education or Panchayat Raj, and expect them to have magically have capacity. Somebody runs to be on the school management committee who maybe even has a 6th standard education, and all of a sudden they know what to do. So would it be possible to experiment with the PRI in Bihar, which actually the Bihar government is very progressive these days, to have a pilot program that every year, well, first of all, maybe you don't want to have an annual election because it does get a lot expensive to train people, but maybe if school management committees are elected every 2 years or 3 years, that the PRI system or some part of the government, the state or the district government, provides a 5-day training in their responsibilities that you provide technical assistance in designing or something like that. You try it in a block or a district. And I think that this is an example, actually, that, remember we talked about a minute ago when we were talking about room to read, that this accountability problem, you just don't want to do, intervention by intervention. So could we put together a package of trainings, not just for the water and sanitation, that all these newly elected local officials are supposed to have this responsibility, actually are taught some sort of skills to do what they're supposed to do? Okay. So I think this could be might be able to form a partnership with other organizations that are trying to deliver these kinds of local services through local institutions to get this kind of training embedded. So that would be one suggestion, and to try to pilot that and see how it works. The other one, which I would be less, I'm less optimistic about, but could be, is to try to get the existing people to train the next generation. So some sort of legacy training that you are responsible for mentoring the people who follow you, and see if that's if there's a way to make that work. I'm not sure if that's likely. Yeah.
I just want one suggestion. Okay, he's saying I just only one sentence. But we have experience is that if you create a demand in the community, and if people know whom they should approach to get the service and what they should do, perhaps many things you do not need to do yourself. The environment will create it, like sanitation, supply chain improvement. We have tried two models. In Sundarban, we have done demand creation for sanitation, and on the other hand, we have done supply chain improvement. We brought private sector players, we train them, we show them how to do, we motivate them that sanitation shop can be one of your livelihood. So that this is how we try to improve the product chain and supply chain. And in the same Sundarban regions, the other island, we do not do anything in terms of supply chain, but we do intensive demand generation. The moment some private people see that these island people going to the other island buying toilet and coming back, they certainly start business by themselves. Nobody spoken to them that you need to do sanitation business. So therefore, if you create a demand in the school children among or in the villages that this is what design, this is what the sanitation toilet design they need, they would ask questions to the government that I need this kind of services. I do not know from where you will get. Now this is the duty of the government and the private sector players. This is perhaps you need to open an idea and demonstrate somewhere in the corner that this is what single model can work.
Well, I think thank you for that, and I know we're supposed to stop, but I just want to say one thing because what you said was so important. I think one of the things that inadvertently we put on the table is to really think hard about what kind of model you're talking about, and is it the right one? Is it supplied? Is it demand, or both? Because there's a tendency to do one or the other and forget the other half, and sometimes that works, but a lot of time it doesn't. And particularly there's a tendency to underestimate demand, that if we can just get more family planning, more health services, more education services, that somehow people naturally will demand them, and if there's no accountability, so I'm really glad you raised that. The second point, though, I thought that you made implicitly, which I think is really important, is there's a concept of sustainability that you were implicitly referring to that I want to make explicit, which is when Mahamita and I were talking about sustainability during the coffee break, we were also talking about the question of behavior change, okay? But this is really behavior change not so much at the individual level, but at the community level, which is at what point does a school management committee or a water sand committee become sustainable, that that community understands it has certain rights that somebody has to deliver on and will demand those rights. My suspicion is if you do it for a year or two, the chances are it won't happen. But if you're present in that community for 5 or 10 years, I know that's a long time, but maybe even just 3 to 5 years might be enough so that, remember, if the school management committee is changing every year, what percentage of adults will have been on that committee over 5 years? It might be 30%. In other words, when do you achieve a critical mass of people having had that experience that the culture changes, that water for people can leave, but the change in the culture has changed so that that accountability is now part of the local culture. And I think we haven't done enough programs like that to know the answer. But I think it's an answer worth finding out, because I think it's a way of solving the sustainability problem of we know doing it for a few years is too little, and we know we can't do it forever, but there may be something in between that actually works, that changes the local culture enough that allows you to leave. So that's just a suggestion for those of you who are in this business. So I hope we'll stay a few so that ARC can get their fair share. So why don't you tell us about the ARC model, and if you could start with, or at least at some point in your little introduction, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? How do you do it? What are the technical components, and what are the the intangibles, the values, the processes, and who actually, what role do you play, and what do your partners do? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Neeta from ARC. ARC is a UK-based charity, and globally we work in about 8 countries. In India, we are at a cusp wherein we are consolidating our work in education. I'm specifically talking about Aspire program over here. So Aspire is a phonics-based English language program. It's a 4-year program, and we work in primary school. So we typically start from grade 1 and work in a school up till children are in grade 4. The focus, like I said, is on phonics. So it's the strategy that we are using to teach English. It's a teacher-oriented program. So while we are targeting to improve fluency of children in reading, writing, and speaking, but it is through the teachers. So we essentially train teachers. It's about 6 to 8 days of training in each academic year. So that's how we kind of implement the program. We provide curriculum material and equip teachers through our capacity building workshop. In addition, so right now we are working in with 19,000 kids across 9 states. 3 states we are working directly, wherein we are implementing the program ourselves, while in the other 6 states it's through the partner organization, like with Bharti Foundation in 5 states and with 17,000 feet in Ladakh. So it's primarily a mix of a model wherein we work ourselves vis-a-vis partner organizations alongside. So it's a fair mixture of composition. So we work in urban schools as well as in rural schools in Meghalaya and with Bharti Foundation as well. So as soon as we start, I would want to say that our program focuses more on pedagogy, and we are not addressing accountability issues. So we do expect our partners to ensure the accountability in the system, be it a government, be it low-cost private schools. So we work with both low-cost private schools and with government. So we expect government to ensure that monitoring and policing through their system is in place, and they are also equal partner and they have equal stakes in the program right from the day one. So therefore our focus is purely on pedagogy. And also we are not so bound on the content that we use. What we want to advocate for is the pedagogy that we follow. It's not essential that you have to use the same set of curriculum material. What we are keen to do is that schools and teachers use the methodology that we are trying to inculcate. So that's the key focus. As part of our monitoring, we also know that once you have trained teacher, you also have to provide on-site support to the teachers, because like you are working in a rural context, teachers often lack proficiency in language themselves. So how are you expected to teach a language that you yourself are not so very comfortable with? So we do understand that teachers also need some on-site support, for which initially we had our people visiting schools on a fixed frequency. But right now we are also in a pilot stage wherein we are trying to experiment other ways of providing that technical support to teachers, which comprises of a mobile phone. So we basically have given teachers a handset with a preloaded application, so they don't need to use internet to basically see whether teachers can use the program. So if they have technical support with them, can they implement the program with the same rigor if we remove the human support element from it? The other thing that we are trying to experiment is a talking pen, which is similar to the mobile phone application, which is almost like a book and a pen with content preloaded, so teachers can use it for their own preparation as well as in classroom delivery. So these are the 2 models that we are trying to test right now, to see if these are successful, to see a cost-benefit analysis as well. So at what cost, what kind of learning outcomes can we achieve, and therefore what is more scalable and sustainable, because engaging human resource on a large scale we know is a difficult challenge, and also in terms of cost it's a pretty difficult one. So that's where we are right now. Through our program, what we have also tested is that how effective is Aspire program in relation to other influencing factors, like how much time does teacher deliver in the classroom. So we have tried to link the learning outcomes of the kids with instruction hours, number of days teachers teach Aspire. So we have tried to link it, and we have seen that at least 51% of days they should teach Aspire, and that's the kind of a critical mass when we see impact in the learning outcomes. In Meghalaya, we are working with Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Government of Education in Meghalaya. So with them, we have ensured that they are involved in the program right from the design to implementation. So we kind of have monthly and quarterly meetings with the state officials as well as officials at district and block levels. So it's to ensure that there's a alignment between the state and the district officials. So while we train teachers to kind of build their capacity on the content and also for them to be convinced in the pedagogy, we also work through the system. So the purpose is to have a mix of bottom up and top to down, bottom up and top to down approach. So that's what we are working on right now. In Meghalaya, we have also tried giving incentives to teachers. So kind of identifying best performing teacher, best performing, so teacher who did her classroom management really well, teacher who delivered phonics very well. So we try to distinguish those categories and we have tried to incentivize them. We are yet to see what is the impact of these incentives on the teacher performance. We are yet to see that. So in nutshell, this is where we are. As an organization, just to tell where we are in terms of scaling up. So like I said, we are working with about 19,000 kids. ARC as an organization believes that we want to incubate ideas, good ideas which we have proven, demonstrated results, and we want to partner with other organizations or set up social enterprise with entrepreneurs on board who can kind of take up this program to scale, while ARC kind of continues to work on newer ideas, trying them out and building and engaging more ideas. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, so in the 10 or 15 minutes we have, what are the one or two challenges that you're facing in terms of scaling up that maybe we could make some progress on?
Yeah. So I think in your presentation, Richard, what were key was what you said, how true are you to your origin vis-a-vis when you scale up, and especially in our case because we want to replicate this idea. So like you said, expansion, replication and collaboration. We are clear that we don't want to expand it ourselves. So clearly that option is eliminated. So like you said, the mix between capability versus capacity. So we know as an organization, we don't have that capacity to expand the program on our own. So clearly we are somewhere in between where we want to replicate the idea. So we do want to have more insights into quality control versus adaptability. We have tested out in certain areas, but again, how true do we remain to our origin? How do we assess learning outcomes going to scale? So that's where those are the challenges.
Finally, a question I think I can answer. Thank you. This was great. So first of all, I just want to be clear. It's clear what ARC wants to do is collaboration, right? In other words, they don't want to do replicate. So I don't know if you noticed on the slides, but if I can quickly go back here. If you look at the different types, you notice that retains control of it. So, okay, gives away control through replication, right? The adopting organizations are in control in the long run. And in collaboration, the originating organization shares control. So one of the key aspects of scaling up is who controls at scale. In other words, because that's that whole fidelity question, right? If it's something where quality and fidelity isn't important, giving away control is not a big deal. If it is, then you want to retain, and then you get into these trade-offs between capacity and capability and scale versus impact and all that kind of stuff. So this is a perfect example of the middle. Okay, so I do have a few things to say because this is a common problem and I've seen it before. The first point I want to make is to distinguish principles versus practices, or principles and outputs versus practices. And this is addressing the fidelity versus the adaptability thing. Okay, thank you. And what I mean by that is when you're documenting your model, especially if you're using a logical framework, what's really helpful is to say, we do these activities which produce these outputs, right? In other words, we provide this training and support for the teachers, which motivate them, give them certain things, and get them to continue, and that produces children who can read and write English well. Okay, so activity, output, outcome. Okay, so the point here, though, is to identify those outputs: motivated teachers, teachers that know how to manage a classroom, etc., etc. Because it may turn out to be the case that as you move from Meghalaya to Uttarakhand or wherever, that there are different ways of achieving that same output, excuse me. So you don't want to get stuck on the only way to teach classroom management is this, because with a certain group of people or a certain culture or a certain caste or a certain tribe, their motivation may be different. Some people, for example, may be very community driven. So you get all the teachers, especially let's say they're women, together and they form a club and they learn together, and in other places that's a disaster. Okay? So you want to let go of an attachment to the specific activity and focus on the principle and the output. Okay? So that's my first thing. Now, the second point I want to make is about how do you find the balance between quality and control, but they don't want to run it themselves. I'm big on accreditation. Okay? Which also, since I know social enterprises are trendy, we can even throw some of the business terms in here, which is branding and marketing. Okay? So in other words, if I were ARC, I would first of all get my name to be important. The ARC model works. The ARC model produces results. We've adopted the ARC model. Okay? Because then other people, whether they're private sector, in other words, if I want ARC to get to a point that if I'm a private school, I can attract more parents by saying, yeah, we use the ARC model of phonics to teach English. It was 10 minutes a minute ago. It must be 5 minutes now. Oh, okay. Sorry. So, because that gives ARC leverage, right? Which is now this school, whether it's public sector or private sector, has an interest in being an ARC certified school. Okay? And then ARC could set up an independent training and certification institute that basically, if you want to use the ARC curriculum and pedagogy, your teachers have to be certified. They have to go through a certain process. And every 3 years, someone from the certification is going to come and visit and make sure that you have to be recertified. Okay? Now, this has a lot of, from my experience, nice qualities about it, because first of all, even though it's more likely that the private sector will be more susceptible, the private schools, than the public schools, it nonetheless creates pressure on the public schools. You understand what I mean? In other words, if in a given community, there's just pick a number, 60% of the kids are going to public schools and 40% are going to private schools, and they're all using ARC, well, the public school says they're using ARC, but they haven't been recertified in a long time. That kind of creates pressure on the principal or the education officials to do something about it, and you could easily see that the certification were actually negotiating with the state or the district officials that this independent body would certify. So you notice we're coming back yet once again to the monitoring and accountability mechanism. And how do we do that? And this is a case we're using the private sector. Now, the tricky business, though, and the only way that this works is if the certification institution can become self-funding. Or somehow subsidized. Now, one of the attractions to try to get the government system involved is that they'll pay, an annual amount of money to the certification to do an independent or every 3 years to do an evaluation of the schools. Then you've already got a foundation of money, a basis that you can replicate on. But then but that's why the branding becomes important. So it has to be, why should people pay for you to do this? Why can't I go off on my own and do it by myself? Now, there's a number of things you could add to the attraction. One is that the brand has name recognition. The second is actually we provide ongoing training or teaching or workshops or what do we call them? Whatever, like a web, what is this thing we're doing right now?
Webcast, webinar.
Webinars, so you do webinars and this-inars and, all that kind of stuff. So you have to think of a package of cost-effective things that the certification and accreditation institution can offer that is willing to, if every 3 years it costs, I don't know how much it would cost, 5,000 rupees, 10,000 rupees to go into a school and recertify it, what's going to make a school want to pay that? What are they getting out of it that makes that trade-off worthwhile? So it's brand, it's services, it's webinars and stuff like that. So thinking how to put that model together in a way that the economics and the finances make sense works. And actually, well, I don't know if we're trying it. I hope we're trying it. I was asked to, it's a different picture, but it's the same generic question, which is, I think I mentioned in February and March, I was in Rwanda for a month evaluating the scalability of a USAID-funded education and training project. And it's exactly the same thing. It was in the introduction of life skills. Half the life skills were being taught by NGOs, and half of them were being mainstreamed into the vocational training. But how do we maintain quality? And the question was, the recommendation I made was the exact same: set up an accreditation institution, which is that the NGOs basically become social enterprises. They charge people who want life skill training, who have capacity to pay, and they cross-subsidize students who are poor, who can't afford to pay, and the government also pays for the certification, and that subsidizes the social aspect of it. So, was that clear? Yeah. So I realized that was a little bit complicated, and I just said that all in about 2 minutes, but I think figuring out how to set up some of these independent monitoring institutions in a way that you get government buy-in, NGO buy-in, and potentially social, and basically transforming these organizations into social enterprises, such as an accreditation institution. I mean, I have no idea, somebody in this room might know, but how many crores or thousands of crores are spent every year in India on coaching and tutoring, right? So the money is there, right? And who accredits these people? Nobody, as far as I know. It's all word of mouth, right? So if you could set up a branding mechanism for all of these different things, whether it's literacy training or English language training or stuff like that, so that the various private and public schools would say, yes, we're using this method and we're certified, you know. I mean, I don't think I've been to an airport here that isn't ISO, whatever it is, 2010 or something like that. So what's the equivalent in the social sector of setting up an ISO system? And how can we get that to pay for itself? That's basically what I'm putting on the table in terms of monitoring. And I think that in terms of scale and sustainability, that's a viable solution. So I know we're out of time, but and I hope that was helpful.
Yes.
But what I'd like to do is, with the indulgence of our hosts from JPAL and CLEAR, just see if there's a few, actually I'm more looking for comments than questions. What did you learn? And I mean, you all sat here for 4 hours. You know, I realize I'm very entertaining, but besides my sense of humor, what did you get out of this that you'd like to share with everybody else? You know, what's your take home? If you could just say something in a minute or two. If we can take 5 more minutes, yeah? Yeah, okay. Or, yeah, from the back.
Yeah, I think it's almost the most basic. You know, what is the model that you're trying to scale? And because there can be many different parts of it, particularly as you were saying, when it gets to the compromise between how much you can do at scale. So if you're willing to cut bits off, and what is that core aspect that you're going to try to take to scale? I mean, it's the key question. It's the first question. But I think to start with that before you start going further than that is just very helpful.
And if I could just add to that, you notice that all three of these people, or these organizations and their models, monitoring and social mobilization were as important, if not more important, than the actual technical content of what they're doing. And I think that's pretty common. And that's one of the things that gets dropped in scaling, and scaling that is one of the most challenging things. And I want to give credit to all three groups, particularly, actually we didn't get a round of applause for either of the last two, so let's. But I think, you know, Water for People has already made significant progress, you know, in this monitoring and building, or strengthening, excuse me, not building, strengthening local institutions. So any other comments about what you learned today?
I may have one. Well, I think the major important takeaway for me is, since being a marketing and communications officer of Board of People, is the documentation part of the whole process. Because we are from marketing and communications, and this is the knowledge management is a major segment of the whole program, and we might not get to know the real reality of the ground location unless people would document each and everything, from being visible and the invisible factors that influences the delivery of the program. So as long as we can circulate the whole documentation through branding activities, through social media, and we can definitely sensitize the whole issue that these are some vital challenges that we're facing throughout, and we can build in communities and streamline every virtual element of our program. And we can, bring the whole thing to a bigger picture that yes, probably this can be done, and we can bring in comments and valuable inputs.
Well, speaking as someone who has a PhD in economics, one of my sayings that I've made up is fewer economists, more anthropologists. So
Okay.
let's figure out what the invisible processes are, because these are organizational or cultural or behavioral change mechanisms, and economists are allowed, well, not all economists, JPAL and CLEAR have actually been very good about starting to document incentive changes and behavior changes, but I think that's one of the reasons they've become well known, is precisely because they're shifting the barrier where economists didn't used to go into where anthropologists and sociologists go, and I think that's really important, and it feeds into what you were just saying.
I may have noticed something that we've been discussing about incentives. What I believe is that we are a major middle class economy as a nation, and if we can look at the program and try and explore some lifestyle incentives, not just incentives in monetary terms, because we cannot definitely afford the whole financial thing, but then anything that influences the vital day-to-day lifestyles of, for example, we are dealing with school teachers, and most of them are females. So what influences their whole lifestyle program, and probably we can discover some incentives around to motivate them. Probably this can work.
Yeah, the most popular actually that work the best are dignity, respect, and social recognition.
Yeah, I think so.
What? No. Yeah, please, Savi.
Richard, thank you for a very, very interesting session. I think this is my first JPAL roundtable. So I'm from GDN, the Global Development Network. We run an annual competition on scaling up innovations. So this, for me, was a refresher course on what really can be scaled up. We've tried to grapple with that. And you basically unpack the model, and I'm thinking through in my head, what sort of criteria do we need to put in our guidelines, in our application template as the donor? What is important? And then also, what can be scaled up? I think that is very, very essential to determine. We have a lot of applicants who say we can scale up this program, we can scale up X program, Y program, but we need to see really what is the determining factor. So I think putting down these criteria that you've listed have really helped me think through on how we can, at my organization, do better with identifying programs to scale up.
Yeah, so just follow up on that. I hope that one of your net takeaways is that this is the answer to the question about what can be scaled up is not separate from the question of where and how. So, like the ARC said, they don't get into the monitoring and accountability. They assume that the public sector will do its job. Well, if you're interested in sustainability, that basically means that their model is scalable where that's true. Or to the room to read, where there are 30 students in a classroom. So I think, somebody says to me, here's my model, is it scalable? I said, from three blocks in Rajasthan to 6 blocks in Rajasthan, that's a different answer than from Rajasthan to Kerala, or from India to Bangladesh, or from 10 to 14-year-old girls to 10 to 40-year-old women. So the where, in terms of what you mean by scale, and what the institutional context that exists in those different locations or demographics are inside. There's no such, in my mind, there's no such thing as an answer to the question, can this intervention or model be scaled up, without answering the questions of where and how. Those three things are codeterminate. That's why it's just, And that's where we get into trouble, because we have such a focus on the innovation that we exclude the other pieces of the puzzle. I know our 5 minutes are out of time, but I want to either let any of the three of you or one of your colleagues, so she's going to take your turn. Go ahead.
I think it's not working. Yeah, it's working. Just something quick. Two things. One thing which I learned is sustainability and scaling are two different. Like, if it depends on the context and the perspective from which we are looking at. From whatever the case studies which were shared, one of the prime question first is sustaining. But however, when we are looking at scaling, a lot of things which we had thought of being sustained may not be there. So it's a very tricky and a very diplomatic way of thinking at, while we are scaling, what are we sustaining? And secondly, being a student of sociology, and I personally believe this is just that any innovation, any idea need not necessarily be scaled up. For example, a certain community in Jharkhand may not need any specific intervention related to health or education, or any specific innovation has been only built in for those communities. So this is something which I think we as development practitioners and thinkers should really think about, especially when he made a really nice comment. I think very few people realize that if people realize themselves the need of maintaining the school, they will do it. Be it the school or be then anybody in the world, either the government or anybody. So these are my two observations and takeaways.
So do you want to say anything, or you good?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes, I agree actually. With you. What we experience globally, it's not in India, that in order to see things sustaining over time, perhaps we need three key things. One is the self-financing mechanism. For anything you create or you strengthen or you promote in the field, if it needs certain money for maintenance management. And the other part is the sustainable monitoring mechanism. And not only mechanism, that mechanism, how and what kind of data and how transparent that monitoring mechanism is. So, monitoring mechanism as a whole. The other one is the service delivery system to meet both repairing maintenance need and providing services to the new populations coming up in future. So I think, so these three things, this is what we have learned. And yes, I think.
Thank you. Last word?
Actually, we do expand our programs every year to, as I said earlier, so within the block we go to new schools and do our intervention. But after going through the presentation, it really helps us what to be think while thinking of scaling up the program to new geography. So really we think of these points. I have noted down these points, and definitely we'll look into these things. So wherever we go, so we'll do all these things. Thank you very much, Richard.
Well, thank you all for coming and staying so long. And I want to particularly thank J-Pal and Clear and all the people around the room, Priya and Mara and everybody who helped organize this. It was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Just one quick last word from Clear and J-Pal. So this concludes our 7th Monitoring and Evaluation Roundtable on scaling up social change. Just one really big quick thank you for Richard for take the time to really go through all of this and spend the morning with us. Let's give him a quick round of applause.
Mara, there's a question. Can we make the slides available to anybody who wants them?
Yes, yeah, we can.
And how can they get them?
So because we have mail ID of everyone, I hope. So
yeah, I think we can put them together and have them available we can either email them out or have them available online, I think.
Well, you can always get it from me. My business cards are up here, but you can also hopefully get it from JPEL Clear, so that'll give us at least 2 options in case there's a fallback mechanism.
Great. And one last word, because we at Clear and JPAL very much value evaluation. We have a feedback form that we would love for you to take just 1 or 2 minutes to fill out. It's in the Clear packet that you have. And other than that, thank you so much for taking the time to come out here, and have a great afternoon.